September 22, 1979. The Indian Ocean. 3 a.m. local time. A U.S. satellite detects a flash of light. A very specific kind of flash. The kind that only comes from one thing. A nuclear explosion. But no country in the world admits it happened. Even today, 45 years later, this remains one of the most disturbing unsolved events of the Cold War era. This is the story of the Vela Incident. Welcome to Shadow Files. To understand this mystery, we need to go back to the world of 1979. The Cold War was at one of its most tense periods. The Soviet Union had just invaded Afghanistan. Iran had experienced a revolution. American hostages were being held in Tehran. The world felt like it was moving closer to nuclear confrontation. At the same time, several smaller nations were secretly developing nuclear weapons of their own. Israel was believed to have nuclear weapons, but had never confirmed it. South Africa was working on a secret program. India had already conducted its first test in 1974. The problem for the world was how to detect secret nuclear tests. This is why the United States had spent enormous resources developing the Vela satellite program. The Vela satellites were launched between 1963 and 1970. Their mission was simple: monitor the Earth for any nuclear explosions. These satellites had an extremely reliable way to identify a nuclear detonation. They looked for one specific thing: a double flash of light. Let me explain why this matters. When a nuclear weapon detonates, it produces a very unique light signature. First, there is an intense initial flash lasting just a few milliseconds. Then, there is a brief period of darkness caused by the shock wave. Finally, there is a second, longer flash as the fireball becomes visible again. This double flash pattern is virtually impossible to reproduce with anything except a nuclear explosion. Not lightning, not meteors, not fires. Only nuclear detonations create this exact signature. Between 1963 and 1979, the Vela satellites detected 41 confirmed nuclear tests around the world. Every single detection was verified. Every single explosion was accounted for. The satellites were doing exactly what they were designed to do. Until September 22, 1979. At exactly 3 hours, 0 minutes, and 53 seconds Universal Time, satellite Vela 6911 detected the classic double flash. Somewhere over the Indian Ocean, between the coast of Africa and Antarctica, someone had just set off a nuclear bomb. The signature was perfect. The pattern was clear. There was no doubt in the initial analysis. This was a nuclear detonation. The location was the most interesting part. The detection pointed to an area near the Prince Edward Islands. These are extremely isolated islands that belong to South Africa. They are located roughly halfway between Africa and Antarctica. If someone wanted to conduct a secret nuclear test, this would be one of the best places on Earth to do it. Far from any populated area. Far from prying eyes. Within hours, the U.S. intelligence community was mobilizing. Scientists began analyzing the raw data. Air Force aircraft were dispatched to collect atmospheric samples. Naval ships were ordered to conduct radiation surveys. The initial analysis was clear. The signature matched a nuclear explosion of approximately 2 to 3 kilotons. This is smaller than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima, but still a nuclear weapon. The question that consumed American intelligence was simple: who did it? The first and most obvious suspect was South Africa. The islands belonged to them. They had been developing a secret nuclear weapons program. They had motive, means, and opportunity. But they were also under significant international pressure due to apartheid. A confirmed nuclear test would have brought devastating sanctions. Would they really risk being caught? The second major suspect was Israel. Israel had been secretly developing nuclear weapons since the 1960s at their Dimona facility. By 1979, they were believed to have a significant nuclear arsenal, though they never officially confirmed it. This policy of nuclear ambiguity has continued to this day. Israel had close but secret ties to South Africa in the 1970s. The two countries shared military technology and cooperated on defense programs. If Israel wanted to test a nuclear weapon without being publicly identified, partnering with South Africa in a remote location would be an ideal arrangement. The Carter administration launched a thorough investigation. Over the following months, additional evidence began to emerge. Scientists in Australia detected slightly elevated levels of iodine-131, a radioactive isotope commonly produced by nuclear explosions. Some sheep in Australia and New Zealand showed traces of radiation in their thyroid glands. Underwater microphones operated by the U.S. Navy detected an unusual acoustic signature at approximately the right time. But there were also problems with the evidence. If a nuclear device had detonated near the surface of the ocean, investigators would have expected more radioactive fallout. Debris patterns should have been more obvious. The physical evidence was ambiguous. Some strongly suggested a nuclear detonation. Other evidence was less clear. In 1980, the White House convened a special panel to review all the evidence. Their conclusions shocked many analysts. The panel decided that the Vela event was probably not a nuclear explosion. Instead, they suggested it was likely caused by a satellite malfunction, possibly triggered by a small meteor hitting the satellite. This conclusion was met with immediate skepticism. The scientists who had worked closely with the Vela program strongly disagreed. The Vela satellites had detected 41 nuclear tests correctly. Their track record was essentially perfect. The idea that this particular detection was a random malfunction seemed statistically impossible. Many analysts believed the panel's conclusion was politically motivated. The Carter administration had significant reasons to avoid confirming a nuclear test. If the test had been conducted by South Africa or Israel, confirming it would create major diplomatic problems. Carter was already dealing with the Iran hostage crisis and the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. There was also the matter of the treaties. The United States had spent decades building an international framework to prevent nuclear proliferation. Confirming that a country had successfully conducted a secret nuclear test would undermine those treaties. It would suggest that the entire monitoring system was less effective than believed. The Vela incident might have faded from public memory if not for continuing efforts of independent researchers. Over the years, new evidence has consistently pointed toward the nuclear explosion theory. In 1997, a South African deputy foreign minister reportedly told a journalist that the 1979 flash had indeed been a joint South African and Israeli nuclear test. The South African government later denied this statement, but the damage was done. In 2006, previously classified U.S. documents were released. These documents revealed that many analysts within the intelligence community had strongly believed the Vela detection was indeed a nuclear test. The panel's conclusion had not been the consensus view. It had been a specific political decision made at the highest levels. The theory that Israel and South Africa jointly conducted the 1979 test has become the most widely accepted explanation among researchers. The two countries had a well-documented military relationship. They shared intelligence and cooperated on weapons development. In 2010, declassified South African documents suggested that Israel had offered to sell South African nuclear warheads in 1975. If this theory is correct, the 1979 event was proof that two countries had successfully conducted secret nuclear operations that violated international norms. It was also proof that a major intelligence agency, the United States, had chosen to publicly conceal the truth for political reasons. Neither Israel nor South Africa has ever officially confirmed the test. Israel maintains its policy of nuclear ambiguity. South Africa, after ending its nuclear program in the early 1990s, has denied that any tests were conducted, but the circumstantial evidence continues to accumulate. Over 45 years have passed since that September night. Multiple U.S. presidents have come and gone. The Soviet Union has collapsed. The world has fundamentally changed. And still, No country has ever officially admitted responsibility for what happened. But probability is not the same as proof. And in matters of national security, without a confession or a definitive smoking gun, the case can never be officially closed. The Vela 6911 satellite continued operating for several more years. It was decommissioned in 1985. It still orbits the Earth today, silent and forgotten, a piece of Cold War history circling above us.